our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to shed light about Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry's official visit to Abu Dhabi, where he was the keynote speaker at the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week Summit. Then we will move to Malawi to know the latest updates of the cholera outbreak, and we will be back home to know the archaeologists who unveiled a royal tomb in Luxor. And we'll start with our report where Foreign Minister Shoukry highlighted the significance of drumming up international support for financing the climate work institutions, including the Green Climate Fund. Shoukry served as president of the 27th UN Climate Change Summit, COP27, which Egypt hosted in Sharm el-Sheikh last November, took part in session dedicated to discuss the outcome of the conference. More details in the following story.
Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry has stressed the importance of drumming up international support for financing climate work institutions, including the Green Climate Fund. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ahmed Abu Zeid said that Shoukry's remarks came during his meeting in Abu Dhabi with the Danish Minister for Development Cooperation and Global Climate Policy, Dan Jensen, on the sidelines of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week Summit. Abu Zeid said Shoukry appreciated Denmark's contribution to climate work, citing a ministerial conference the European country hosted in May 2020 to honor pledges on climate. Shoukry also appreciated the role of Danish minister in facilitating climate negotiations and his efforts to reduce the effects of climate change. The foreign minister, who is the president of the COP27 conference, highlighted efforts to increase dependence on renewable energy and reduce dependence on fossil fuel. He said he hoped that Denmark would continue its efforts to support climate work. Shoukry headed to the United Arab Emirates capital on Sunday evening to be the keynote speaker at this session that is dedicated for discussing the outcomes of the COP27. The Danish minister, for his part, hailed the successes achieved during the COP27 climate change conference held in Sharm el-Sheikh in November. He said that he looked forward to pursuing coordination and consultations with Egypt's presidency of the COP27 ahead of the COP28 due to be held in Dubai late this year.
Well, our dear viewers, to shed more light on the issue, are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Mohammed Amer, coordinator of the International Relations and Conferences. Dr. Amer, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being our guest for today. Sir, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry said that setting up a loss and damage fund to help the vulnerable nation cope with the climate-induced disaster is actually a historic achievement, fulfilling the 27 years of negotiations. What's your take on that, Dr. Amer?
Yeah, sure. It's safe to say that the Loss and Damage Fund is the paramount achievement of COP27 held in Sharm el-Sheikh last November, which also reflects the success of the conference itself. The funds come at a time it's important for the whole world to cooperate and coordinate its efforts for the benefit of the most vulnerable countries. And hereby, I exactly mean the African countries and South Asian, and which did not contribute to the global warming, by the way. However, they are the most vulnerable ones, despite their, as I said before, zero contribution to the global warming. So this huge step will bring trillions of cash and hot money to them as a compensation to be invested in green infrastructure, railways, and even planting reclaimed agricultural land. So this step also reflects how serious the Egyptian state is in dealing with the African fire stemming from its rule in the African debt, of course.
Yes. Actually, sir, around 200 countries at the 27th UN Climate Change Conference reached an agreement in order to establish a funding mechanism to compensate the vulnerable nations for the loss and damage from the climate-fueled disasters. Can you shed light about that as well?
Yeah, surely government took the groundbreaking decision to establish new funding mechanisms and arrangements, as well as dedicated the funding to assist the developing countries in responding to loss and damage. Governments also agreed to establish a transitional committee to make recommendations on how to operationalize the the new funding mechanisms and arrangements, and to fund at COP28, by the way, in the next year. So the first meeting of the Transitional Committee is expected to take place before the end of March 23. These are all just mere examples of the funding mechanisms that will be applicable in the forthcoming months. You could also think about how Egypt will deliver the COP presidency to the United Arab Emirates, who will go through a number of steps in order to make such mechanisms into action. So this will not stop here. It's just the beginning of a long series of steps.
Yes. Actually, sir, during the COP27, Egypt succeeded in focusing the attention on adaptation measures by linking them to the essentials of the daily life, including the food security and the water management. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I always tell that whether SDGs or adaptation measures can be easily, totally applied to the individual level. I mean, our daily lives and our lifestyles can be totally changed and adapted to cope up with the changes in global food and water security measures. So this will include changing our mentality and dealing with consumption habits in food and water. And this comes handy in the midst of the global financial crisis. So we are obliged to watch how we deal with the ecosystems around us to keep what is left to us safe and sound until we pass just through this crisis and survive in the threatening challenges ahead of us. So you can save water, you can save electricity, you can save food, along with the using of non-plastic containers, maybe, and products. This will help a lot, in my opinion.
Yes. Sir, also experts have always raised concern about how the climate change is affecting the food security. What kind here of the global action must be taken in order to limit the effects of the climate change and all the repercussions on these essential things like the food, the water, all these which were affected by the repercussions of the climate change?
Yeah, surely the world is facing a potential food crisis, by the way, worse than any time else since the World War II. So with Russia's devastating war on Ukraine, historic drought and heat wave in China, and there is an irregular monsoon season in South Asia, there is food supplies from several of the world's largest countries are highly uncertain and concerning. So in response to this cold risk for the global food system, the world community now begins to coalesce around several action areas. You can also focus on the Declaration of Leaders Summit on global food security, also the Global Alliance for Food Security, the GAF. This is convened by the G7 development ministers. So I think these steps will help taking further actions and further initiatives in order to provide more security to our food and water. So it's not only food, but it's food and water security in the future.
Indeed. Sir, also Foreign Minister Shukri confirmed that Egypt is ready actually to host the Global Center for Supply and Storage of Grain in cooperation with the international community in a way that helps fight the ongoing food crisis worldwide. How do you see these statements by the Foreign Minister and how that could be actually implemented on the ground?
Yeah, the world during the last few years or the last 3 years was hit twice. Once by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and another one by the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, which badly affected and still affects the supply chain all over the world. So the later delivery of grain, rice, and different food supplies, especially to those vulnerable countries in Africa, this led to a series of negative impacts, like the rise of prices of grains and the lack of provided products, and also threatening the food security itself. So hence comes the idea of Global Center for the Supply and Storage of Grain here hosted by Egypt. It will mainly serve as a bank of grains in the time of crises like these. So it will help countries to contribute to the food security to vulnerable states, especially here in Africa.
Yes, indeed. How can the developing and the less developed countries mitigate the effects of the climate change in order not to compromise its food security?
Yeah, I believe all countries, whether rich or poor, must adapt to climate change. These are dramatic consequences of failing to
Yeah.
curb the rise in global temperature and adapting to a hotter planet. So adaptation should address risks from climate change and extreme weather,
Yeah.
for example, by safeguarding agriculture, maybe managing the impact of rising seas, also making infrastructure more resilient. So I believe there will be a lot of benefits of adaptation that may be somehow difficult to estimate, but because they depend on specific factors such as how well adapted a country to other changes and so on. So long-term savings will help more in finding investments to vulnerable countries. So mitigating climate change effects mainly depends on both poor and rich countries. It's not
Yes.
only on the rich countries.
Actually, sir, according to the 2021 UNICEF report, Egypt has battled an annual water deficit of approximately 7 billion cubic meters over the past few years. By the year 2025, the country may potentially run out of water entirely. Some
Yeah.
call to use the water as a resource and not as a threat. What's the thoughts here regarding this very alarming statement as well?
Well, thank you so much for the very good question. I believe the Egyptian government is now taking serious steps in this regard. It's due to award like $3 billion American dollars worth of contracts next year for the establishment of like 20 or 21 distillation planets. Over 200 companies expressed their interest during the pre-qualification process, which took place in the late November in COP27. The plans try to target to capacity like 3.3 million cubic meters of water per day. Egypt will also employ reverse technology in its desalination plants. So it's more energy efficient compared to thermal technology, which needs 5 times more electricity to produce water. So these are steps taken by the government, which is keen in finding alternatives to the traditional and conventional way.
Yes. Sir, discussing how best to face the worsening climate conditions, the attendees highlighted the importance of the public-private cooperation and partnership, sustainable financing, as well as increasing the community engagements. How do you see these suggestions, and to what extent we can see here a real contribution regarding the issue of facing the repercussions of the climate change and trying to reduce its negative impact?
Yeah, totally. I believe there is no doubt that more public and private sector partnerships are needed to achieve a greener economic and social development, not only in Egypt, but all over Africa as well. So both people and economies are suffering from major disproportionate ways from climate change, despite the contributing only 3%, to global warming. So when there are partnerships between the two major players here in the economic game, I believe this will help the NGOs, the private sector, the utilization of finance and investment opportunities in climate action. And it will also indulge and involve the application of new technologies. This will help find new job opportunities, new investments. It will pump trillions of cash and hot money to the market here.
Yes. Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Helal Said, launched the Friends of Greening National Investment Plans for Africa and developing countries initiative that capitalizes on the success stories of partners in tackling the impacts of the climate change. Can you shed more light about this initiative, sir?
Yeah, of course. So Egypt is on the course to ensure like 100% of its national projects to meet green criteria by 2023. Through this its vision and 2023 plan, Egypt sets a goal to the government-funded green projects, including that initiative, which reaches up to 50% by 2025. So the ministry itself has taken the task of making sure that these projects spanning all sectors around it, from transport to waste management abiding to sustainability criteria.
Yeah.
For example, that means using natural resources for better results in the future.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Muhammad Amer, coordinator of the International Relations and Conferences, thank you so much for your very precious input. And moving on to Malawi, where there was visible excitement among students when schools reopened Tuesday in the country's two biggest cities after 2 weeks suspension caused by the cholera outbreak. The bacterial illness has killed close to 800 people, more than 100 of them children. All were affected, more than 20,000 people. Malawi's government announced measures to prevent the cholera from spreading in schools, but warned it will shut down the schools again if needed.
Tuesday marks the return of classes to primary and secondary schools in Malawi's two largest cities, following a cholera outbreak that claimed hundreds of lives. After the Christmas break, schools in the capital and the business district had been closed for at least 2 weeks. Over 750 individuals have already died as a result of the cholera outbreak, which started in March of last year. Both the capital and the business hub still have significant infections rates. Malawi's health minister said schools now have access to safe water and improved sanitation facilities, which will go to a long way in reducing infections reported in schools. The minister was optimistic that infections in schools would reduce due to improved sanitation facilities. Malawi is among 31 countries globally hardest hit by cholera. Last week, the government asked for international assistance as it was running low on medical supplies. The country has seen a large number of instances of cholera as a result of the aftermath of Tropical Storm Anna and Cyclone Gombi, which last year caused several floods and devastated the water and sanitation infrastructure of the nation.
Archaeologists have uncovered a royal tomb that could date back thousands of years. The tomb was found in Luxor, where lots of other ancient artifacts have been discovered. Experts think this tomb was from the 18th dynasty of Pharaonic Egypt, which was from 1550 BC to 1292 BC. Whilst it could take a while before we know who the royal could be, teams think it could be a queen or a princess.
Authorities announced Saturday the discovery of an ancient tomb in Luxor dating back to around 3,500 years that archaeologists believe holds the remains of an 18th dynasty royal. Mustafa Waziri, head of the Egypt Supreme Council of Antiquities, said that the tomb was unearthed by Egyptian and British researchers on the west bank of the River Nile, where the famous Valley of the Queens and Valley of the Kings lie. Waziri said in a statement that the first elements discovered so far inside the tomb seem to indicate that it dates back to the 18th dynasty of pharaohs Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. The 18th dynasty, part of the period of Egyptian history known as the New Kingdom, ended in 1292 BC and is considered among the most prosperous years of ancient Egypt. Piers Little of the University of Cambridge, head of the British research mission, said the tomb could be a royal wife of prince of the lineage. Archaeologist Mohsen Kamel said the tomb interior was in poor condition. Kamal added that the parts of the including inscriptions were destroyed in ancient floods, which filled the burial chambers with sand and limestone sediment, according to the Antiquities Board statement. Egypt has unveiled several major archaeological discoveries in recent years, most notably in Saqqara necropolis south of the capital Cairo. The discoveries have been a key component of Egypt's attempts to revive its vital tourism industry, the crowning jewel of which is the long-delayed inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum at the foot of the pyramids. Tourism industry accounts for 10% of GDP and some 2 million jobs.
Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of our program Africa Today. And we were tackling the Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry's statement, which highlighted the role of the international institutions in drumming up for climate work. Well, many thanks for watching.